I enter the stage with this award, and there is also an empty seat. The reason why the empty seat, because we are now announcing the winner of My Data is Mine 2025 with an outstanding paper on the machine learning, the Goldilocks standard, machine learning, and the right to be forgotten under emerging legal frameworks. So please welcome on stage Pratiksha Ashok. Welcome and congratulations for being our winner.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So, Patricia, congratulations for winning the award for this year, My Data is Mine 2025. My Data is Mine is an award that was established in 2020. It's the 6th edition in the framework of the Consumer Empowerment Project, an initiative powered by Euroconsumers and Google. The My Data is Mine award is a way to recognize outstanding researchers as you in the field of data protection. The topic of your paper is absolutely critical in this moment because it touches one of the most difficult points related to the generative AI. So my question for you is if you can give us a glimpse of your paper, especially from the consumer protection perspective, because what I found interesting is what does it mean, the machine learning, for example, for consumers trying to control their digital traces in the generative AI world?
Thank you very much for the award. Thank you, Web Summit. This is a wonderful place. It's very fun to be here. In short, to say what my paper is about, this paper lies in the space between law and life, where we often write regulations in poetry, but when it comes to enforcing them, it sort of becomes code, hardcore prose. So that's where this paper originates from. This paper also comes from like frustration where GDPR writes all of these principles, but they're not enforced. But it also comes with a belief and an aspiration that they're not just merely words on a piece of paper, that there is hope at the end of the light. It's not a utopian dream that these rights will come to fore. This is an actual reality that this would happen. That is where the GDPR shines as this utopian dream. It says, well, you know what, when we're writing all of these laws, we're giving human dignity in data with these principles. That's where GDPR shines. But what it lacks is not intention, but it's imagination. When it writes laws and provisions like the right to be forgotten, it imagines data as rows and columns that you can delete, like deleting a folder off your computer. But that's not how data exists anymore. It exists in the memory of these machines, and that's what needs to be forgotten. For a consumer, it's their moral right to have this dignity. They feel that their rights under the GDPR are half enforced because their rights can be deleted, the data can be deleted with this right, but the machine still remembers. The memory of the machine cannot be erased. That is what this Goldilocks standard seeks to achieve.
No, that's super interesting. For those who are interested, the paper is freely available online on the CP site, so cp-project.org. And one point that I found really fascinating about your paper was also the interplay with the Data Act, because we have this complex regulatory landscape in Europe with different pieces of legislation dealing with data. So we have the GDPR, of course, we have the Data Governance Act, we have the Data Act, and so on. And now with the simplification, probably we will have other pieces of regulation. So one point that I found interesting, and I took note of this from your paper, is that from one side, we have the Data Act that aims to enhance data access and portability, and you argue that this push for sharing can complicate the legal enforceability of unlearning. So yes. What is your point of view on this?
The complication that arises with the Data Act is, again, not in its principle, it's in its infrastructure. When we talk about data sharing, it's a wonderful dream that EU has, where we are sharing for the right to repair, for the right to the circular economy, to right to innovation. It's wonderful, but then what we forget is the other rights that come along with it. The right to be deletion has to be compatible with this right to portability. If it's incompatible, when the data is shared to multiple third parties that this Data Act seeks to achieve, you have the right to be forgotten, and all the other rights complementary with that. The Data Act, though, has these provisions, has these ideas. What it lacks is structural enforceability. So that's the criticism where the GDPR has, but the Data Act doesn't.
And Raquel, we also have an issue with the explainability of the system. In the backstage, we were speaking about this decision coming from the Supreme Court in Spain. I mean, this is another important topic. So we don't have only the problem with the unlearning of the system, so to protect the consumer's right about their data, but we also have a problem in terms of fairness, because if you don't understand why a decision is taken, what is the rationale behind the decision, we have an issue with fairness.
Yes, I would say that when you mention fairness for consumers, I think it means going deeper than accountability or explainability or transparency. It means embedding fairness by design at every stage of the development and deployment. So there is a first step, and that is guaranteeing, it's not granted yet, transparency and explainability. Well, it's very important. There's a lot to be built about the explainability, because many people say that you can't have a strong right to explainability founded on the High Act. And in short, you have the High Act doesn't create a right to explainability. You have to articulate it with the subject's rights on GDPR. So that's very important, the way you articulate all these instruments. So explainability, what I think it's a psychological line that when crossed places artificial intelligence against rule of law. And that's the line when humans allow machines to make decisions by them and they don't understand how they work. Well, I think it's very important to guarantee that we understand really what the machines are working. And of course, if we live in a digital democratic rule of law, we must know how a decision, automated decision, affects fundamental rights or another constitutional protected goods, get that outcome. It's very important, and it must be something more than the right to give reasons for some administrative act. You have to explain, and that is very important, because not only that Spanish rule from the Supreme Court of Spain that ordered the Spanish state to grant access to an algorithm because there was an error in the algorithm, and it was social benefit. Yeah, okay. And then you have another decision from the Court of Justice of the European Union, very important, although the rule issued on the context of GDPR. But the court clarified that Article 15 of GDPR should be understood as to give the individuals the right to ask meaningful information about automated decisions that are made about them. And that is very important. And even if, and the court clarified that even if the data controller thinks that to share this information, they think that they can share also third-party data that's always protected by GDPR or trade secrets, the court specified that the data controller must submit those questions to the authority of control, and that's very important.
Since we are running out of time, just a final word from each of you. From your perspective, if we look ahead, what is the single most important action that regulators, industry, consumers together can take to ensure that the future of AI and data protection is a future of empowerment and not of exploitation?
Do you want to go first?
Well, I think it's working together. Well, it's very important to work together, because the obligations of, for example, for the high-risk systems are only coming into effect next year. So there is a time to literacy. It's very important to literacy in artificial intelligence, and also producing guidelines that can really help the market and help the consumers how to guarantee their rights, and it is very important.
Pratiksha?
I mean, if you have to take one thing away, it's to consider that at the end of the day, we're all humans. There is a human being behind that data. It's not just data as a resource. There are there's human dignity behind that data. And that is where empowerment comes from, where we recognize that dignity.
Okay. Thank you all for staying with us, and enjoy the rest of Web Summit. Thank you.